Perfectly Obstinate People with Kathy Kolbe shares stories of resilience, persistence, and defiance. Kathy Kolbe has empowered millions to trust their guts. Now Kathy empowers you to be you.
One of the things that's very much on my mind this week is one of my favorite types of ability, that unsung heroes, people who don't necessarily initiate action. They aren't the self-starters. They aren't the people who prevent problems by resisting doing things. They're the rarest form of cognitive MO, or modus operandi. And I've discovered that these are people who actually accommodate in at least 3 or 4 of the cognitive modes that I identified. There are people I've called facilitators or mediators, pick your word. Some people like one and not the other. They mediate among people, they facilitate problem solving. And because they aren't the ones who initiated the action, they're very much unrewarded for their great contribution. They keep teams moving, they keep solutions coming along and happening, and they don't prevent by saying, no, I wouldn't do it that way. They will accommodate what is necessary and facilitate a team. These facilitators are so important to problem solving that every organization needs them. Few people think of them as leaders because they didn't come up with the solution. They helped the team deal with the solution. Well, why is it important today? Why am I bringing this up now? Because we're celebrating the life of a president of the United States who was a facilitator, in my opinion. Everything I know about George Bush the first is that he had to have been a facilitator. He would never allow anybody to write a speech for him that used the word I. It wasn't about him. He wanted it to be about his country, his presidency, his organization, not because it was about him, but it was because it was about them. Very, very few people who've ever risen to the level of President of the United States have seemed to be so ego-free. And to me, it's because he had an ego, but it was an ego about being the leader of a team, about being the facilitator who guided other people. He was the guy who, to me, was the role model of reunification, which he did with Germany. When the wall came down, he didn't cut a ribbon. He didn't make it about himself. He made it about them, the people of Germany. He let them do it their way.
I think the United States part of this, which is not related to this development today particularly, is being handled in a proper fashion. And we'll have some that'll suggest more flamboyant courses of action for this country. And we're, I think, handling this properly with allies, staying in close touch, and this dynamic change, trying to help as development takes place, trying to enhance reform, both political and economic.
When he, through his leadership of helping the U.S. military with Desert Storm, he not only wasn't out there in front with the flag or doing all of the TV shows with successes, he made very sure that when the news was good, Colin Powell, the general, spoke for the military, not himself as president. So we remember Colin Powell as a very fine warrior, as a very fine leader of the troops. But he was glad to give that credit to the military, but here he was president. Most presidents would be on TV talking about what they led the country to. That wasn't what George Bush did. It's interesting that at the end of that war, there was a ticker tape parade in New York City. He was not in the parade because he said the victory belonged to those who fought in the war. He had fought in a war. He had been in combat. But he didn't win this war, and he didn't think just because he was president he should be leading the ticker tape parade. That's so different from the MO of somebody who thinks I initiated, I did it, and I deserve the awards. I think it's interesting, too, the media took him on and criticized him for not taking initiative. That was one of the big things that was said about him. Yeah, you could say the guy didn't take initiative, and you would be right. There's very few things he took initiative on. The military head talked him into going to war. Congress did approve it. He didn't go to war until he checked with the Russians, the United Nations. He checked with everybody before he decided to go to war, because that's what a facilitator does. They collaborate, they cooperate.
Good evening. Yesterday, after conferring with my senior national security advisors and following extensive consultations with our coalition partners, Saddam Hussein was given one last chance, set forth in very explicit terms to do what he should have done more than 6 months ago: withdraw from Kuwait without condition or further delay, and comply fully with the resolutions passed by the United Nations Security Council. Regrettably, the noon deadline passed without the agreement of the government of Iraq to meet demands of United Nations Security Council Resolution 660, as set forth in the specific terms spelled out by the coalition to withdraw unconditionally from Kuwait. To the contrary, what we have seen is a redoubling of Saddam Hussein's efforts to destroy completely Kuwait and its people. I have therefore directed General Norman Schwarzkopf, in conjunction with coalition forces, to use all forces available, including ground forces, to eject the Iraqi army from Kuwait. Once again, this was a decision made only after extensive consultations within our coalition partnership.
His cooperation with Congress has probably never been seen as a better communication cooperation between a president and Congress. Quite amazing. He accommodated people. If you look at some of the films of him, when he talks to children, you see him bending over to be at their eye level. And he was a tall guy. He was inclusive. How many presidents have let their wife get that much attention and not sort of look like they didn't really like that attention going to the wife? I mean, we saw when Kennedy's wife got so much attention when they went to France, you could see on his face he wasn't really happy with it. But with George Bush, he always just looked proud when his wife was getting the attention. She wasn't just on his arm. She was doing what she did best, and he would love it. When his son became president, he wasn't telling his son what to do. It's very clear that he didn't give him advice. He let him run his presidency. These are not things that people who initiate action do. And I'm not trying to aggrandize facilitator. He would not want that because facilitators don't aggrandize. What I'm trying to do is say, you can be a facilitator, you can be a person who doesn't initiate, and you can be a very good leader.
Restoration of public confidence is essential if we are to get on about our important work here. But the emphasis now will be on the future. And because of its dedicated people, this agency is the finest intelligence agency in the world. They will have my total support, and I'll work hard at that. We are not in the policy business. We'll call them as we see them, and we'll be objective in our estimates. I'm determined to protect those things that must be kept secret. And I am more determined to protect those unselfish and patriotic people who, with total dedication, serve their country, often putting their lives on the line, only to have some people bent on destroying this agency expose their names. This must stop, and I'll do my level best to play a role in that. I want this job. I want to do it well, and I'm proud to be a part of the CIA.
It doesn't make for a good politician. It doesn't make for a second term, because the media is saying, where's the initiative? Your party leadership is saying, you're not out in front. You're not getting us the good PR. You're not taking the steps we need.
Here's the way we see it, and the country should see it, that the people have spoken, and we respect the majesty of the democratic system. I just called Governor Clinton over in Little Rock and offered my congratulations. He did run a strong campaign. I wish him well in the White House, and I want the country to know that our entire administration will work closely with his team to ensure the smooth transition of power. There is important work to be done, and America must always come first. So we will get behind this new president and wish him well.
And yet you can lose after really trying hard to win the second term, and you can end up collaborating with the person who beat you. I think that's one of the most fascinating tales about this facilitator, past president, is he joined hands and collaborated with the guy who beat him so that they could do humanitarian efforts together. Bush and Clinton really did some great stuff together. And whether you like either one or neither of them, you have to look at it and say, and Clinton always seemed to be the leader because he was a guy who cognitively initiated. And Bush was the facilitator who accommodated that collaboration. You have to have people in the world who help others work together. They're not the people who usually win presidential elections. They're not the people who would get reelected. They are the people who are going to get criticized for not showing what we see as traditional forms of taking initiative type leadership. But without the facilitators in the world, all we do is fight. All we do is aggrandize. Beating your chest and saying, I'm the best, isn't always what we need. And having people who are naturally equipped and instinctively built to collaborate, to integrate efforts, to cooperate, I think that's one of the things that leads to greater peace and sustainability.
I feel the same sense of wonder and majesty about this office today as I did when I first walked in here. I've tried to serve here with no taint or dishonor, no conflict of interest, nothing to sully this beautiful place and this job I've been privileged to hold.
Thanks for listening to Perfectly Obstinate People with Kathy Kolbe. Make sure you subscribe today so you don't miss an episode. It's easy, 100% free, and 100% Kathy. Visit perfectlyobstinate.com for more. That's perfectlyobstinate.com.